My hands were steady as I adjusted the IV drip for Sergeant Morrison, a 68-year-old veteran who'd been under my care for 3 weeks at the Richmond Veterans Hospital in Virginia. The morning sun filtered through the blinds of the intensive care unit, casting long shadows across the linoleum floor. I'd been working this shift for 7 years, and nothing surprised me anymore, or so I thought. The double doors burst open with such force that they slammed against the walls, and a colonel in full dress uniform strode in, flanked by 2 MPs. His jaw was set, his eyes scanning the room with military precision. "Everyone freeze," he barked. "This entire wing needs to be evacuated immediately. This is a matter of national security." The 3 other nurses on duty looked at me, confusion and fear mixing in their expressions. Patients stirred in their beds, some reaching for call buttons, others sitting up with alarm spreading across their weathered faces. I stayed exactly where I was, my fingers still on Sergeant Morrison's wrist, counting his pulse. "With all due respect, sir," I said calmly, "these patients are critical. Moving them without proper preparation could kill them." The colonel's face reddened. "That wasn't a request, nurse. That was an order. Clear this room now." Something in his tone told me this wasn't standard protocol. Something was very wrong. If this story has hooked you so far, subscribe to the channel now, because what comes next will surprise you even more. I straightened my spine and met his glare directly. "Sir, I understand you have authority here, but so do I. These are my patients, and I won't move them until I know why." The colonel stepped closer, his boots clicking against the floor with each measured step. His name tag read Patterson, and there was a hardness in his eyes that I recognized from my own path. "You don't ask questions when a superior officer gives you a direct command," he said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. The MPs shifted behind him, hands moving closer to their sidearms. The other nurses had already started backing toward the door, pulling charts with them, casting apologetic glances in my direction. But I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, because in that moment, standing in that sterile hospital room in Virginia, I was transported back 15 years to a field hospital outside Kandahar, where orders meant the difference between life and death, where questioning authority could cost you everything. "I am a nurse here," I began carefully. "But before I came to Richmond, before I wore these scrubs, I wore a different uniform." The colonel's expression flickered, just barely, but I caught it. "Who are you?" he demanded. "My name is Laura Bennett," I replied, "but you might know me by my designation, 7423 Delta 9. Thank you for staying with me this far. This shows you feel the same way I felt when I lived all of this. So subscribe and hit the bell, because what comes now changes everything." The room went completely silent. The machines continued their rhythmic beeping, but everything else stopped. Colonel Patterson's face went from red to pale in seconds. His hand, which had been gesturing toward the door, froze mid-air. The MPs exchanged confused glances, clearly not understanding the significance of what I'd just said, but Patterson understood. Oh, he understood perfectly. 7423 Delta 9 wasn't just a random string of numbers and letters. It was a combat medical designation, assigned only to nurses who served in classified military operations, the kind that never made it into official records, the kind that were buried so deep that even Freedom of Information requests couldn't unearth them. It meant I'd been there, in the places no one talks about, treating wounds that officially never happened, saving soldiers who were never supposed to exist. Patterson took a step back, his military composure cracking like ice under pressure. "You were Operation Sandstorm," he whispered, "and it wasn't a question." "I was there for 18 months, I confirmed, my voice steady despite the memories flooding back. "Field Hospital 7. We operated out of that abandoned school building 30 kilometers west of the base. You sent us 43 casualties in one night during the compound raid. I lost 11 of them. Now I want to hear from you. Where are you watching this story from? Write it down in the comments." It's incredible to see people from so many places following stories like this. The colonel's hand went to his forehead, and for a moment, the hardened military officer disappeared, replaced by something more human, more vulnerable. "I commanded that operation," he said quietly. "Those men, those casualties, they were my responsibility." The MPs remained silent, clearly lost in a conversation they couldn't fully comprehend. I could see Patterson struggling with something, memories perhaps, or guilt that he'd carried for over a decade. "Sir," I said more gently now, "whatever you're investigating, whatever brought you here today, these patients still need care. Some of them served in operations just like Sandstorm. They deserve better than to be evacuated like cargo." He looked around the ICU, really seeing it for the first time. Sergeant Morrison, still connected to his IV, was watching us with sharp eyes that missed nothing despite his condition. 2 beds over, Captain Rodriguez was sitting up, his prosthetic arm visible where his hospital gown had shifted. These weren't just patients. They were warriors who'd given everything. Patterson's shoulders sagged slightly. "I'm looking for medical records from Operation Sandstorm," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "There's been an inquiry. Allegations of improper care, of decisions made that cost lives. Your name came up, Bennett." My heart hammered against my ribs. "What kind kind of allegations? The kind that end careers and open criminal investigations, he replied. My mind raced back to those 18 months in that makeshift field hospital. The building had been a school once. You could still see children's drawings on some of the walls beneath the camouflage netting we'd hung. We worked with limited supplies, inconsistent power, and a constant threat of attack. Every decision was impossible. Every choice meant someone lived and someone else might not. I made the best calls I could with what I had, I said firmly. Every single one of those soldiers got the best care possible under those conditions. Patterson pulled a folder from inside his uniform jacket. I've read the reports, Bennett. I know what you were working with. But someone is saying that on the night of August 14th, 2009, you made a decision that prioritized certain casualties over others based on factors other than medical necessity. August 14th. The date hit me like a physical blow. That was the night everything changed. That was the night I had to choose. We had 27 critical casualties come in within 45 minutes, I said, my voice shaking now. We had 2 operating tables, 3 doctors, and supplies for maybe half that number. I did triage the way I was trained, the way every combat nurse is trained. But someone is saying you let a soldier die because of who he was, Patterson pressed. The accusation hung in the air like poison gas. My legs felt weak, and I gripped the edge of Sergeant Morrison's bed to steady myself. Who is saying this? I demanded. Patterson glanced at the MPs, then back to me. Senator Whitmore's chief of staff has filed a formal complaint. He claims his brother, Private First Class Derek Whitmore, died that night because you refused to treat him, prioritizing other patients based on their rank and potential political value. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. Derek Whitmore. I remembered him, young, barely 20, with a sucking chest wound and internal bleeding that we couldn't control. He'd been brought in during the worst of it, when we were already elbows deep in blood and screaming and the horrible reality of mass casualties. I didn't refuse to treat him, I said, my voice breaking. I triaged him as expectant. He had injuries incompatible with life given our resources. We had soldiers we could save if we focused our efforts there. Patterson's expression softened. I know what expectant means, Bennett. I know it's the hardest call any medic ever has to make. But his brother doesn't see it that way. He sees a working-class kid who died while officers got preferential treatment. That's not what happened, I insisted. Every decision I made was based on medical criteria, on survivability, on who had the best chance. Patterson opened the folder and pulled out several sheets of paper. These are the medical records from that night. Your handwriting, your signatures. He laid them on the nearby counter, and I forced myself to look at them. Seeing those documents, my own rushed notes scrawled in the margins, brought everything rushing back. The smell of blood and antiseptic, the generators failing twice, the sound of mortars in the distance, the endless, terrible decisions. I see you triaged Private Whitmore at 21:47 hours, Patterson continued, marked him expectant, and moved on to Captain Bradley, who had similar injuries, but was listed as immediate. I closed my eyes, fighting tears. Captain Bradley had a penetrating abdominal wound, but his vitals were stable. He had a chance. Private Whitmore had lost too much blood by the time he reached us. His lung was collapsed, his blood pressure was crashing, and we didn't have the plasma or the surgical capacity to save him, while also treating the others who still had viable chances. The math was brutal but simple. So you chose, Patterson said, not accusingly, but with a weariness that told me he understood these impossible calculations. I chose to save who I could, I whispered. That's what triage means. That's what war demands. But try explaining that to a grieving brother who became a powerful political operative. Patterson closed the folder and looked at me with something that might have been respect or might have been pity. The inquiry board wants your testimony. They want you to justify every decision from that night. They want to know if rank influenced your medical judgments. My hands were shaking now. I'd spent 15 years trying to move past that deployment, trying to sleep without seeing those faces, trying to live a normal life where the hardest decision was which patient to check on first during rounds, not who deserved a chance at life. This will destroy me, I said quietly. Even if I'm exonerated, even if they understand that I followed protocol, my career here is finished. No hospital will trust a nurse under investigation for patient care violations. Patterson looked around the ICU again. Sergeant Morrison had closed his eyes, but I could tell he was listening. Captain Rodriguez was openly watching now, his jaw set in a way that reminded me of the soldiers I'd treated all those years ago. I have to be honest with you, Bennett, Patterson said. I didn't come here to arrest you, or even to take you in for questioning. I came to warn you. The inquiry is being pushed by people with political agendas, people who don't understand, or don't care about the realities of combat medicine. They want a scapegoat, and you're it. Why warn me? I asked. You don't owe me anything. Patterson's jaw tightened. Because I was there, Bennett. I sent those men to you. I made the call that resulted in that mass casualty event. If anyone should be on trial, it's me, not the nurse who tried to save them with inadequate resources. He pulled out a business card and pressed it into my hand. This is my personal number. When they come for you, and they will, call me. I'll I'll testify. I'll bring every officer who served in Sandstorm to testify. We'll make sure they understand what you were dealing with. I looked down at the card, barely able to read it through my tears. After all these years of silence, of carrying this alone, someone finally understood. Someone who'd been there knew the truth. But there's something else you need to know, Patterson continued, his voice dropping even lower. Derek Whitmore wasn't just any private. His medical records show he'd been flagged for psychological evaluation 2 weeks before that raid. There were concerns about his stability, about why he'd volunteered for that mission. His brother knows this and is trying to bury it. My head snapped up. Are you saying his death might not have been just about his injuries? Patterson's silence was answer enough. The implications were staggering, and suddenly this wasn't just about my triage decisions anymore. The next weeks were the hardest of my life. The inquiry board convened, and I sat in a gray room answering questions about decisions I'd made in seconds, while mortar rounds fell around us. But Patterson kept his word. He testified. So did 3 other officers from Operation Sandstorm, including one who'd been in the field hospital that night, and confirmed every detail of my account. The medical evidence supported my decisions. Expert witnesses explained combat triage protocols, and slowly, painfully, the truth emerged. Private Whitmore had been struggling with severe depression and had disobeyed orders to put himself in harm's way. His brother had spent years trying to rewrite that narrative, to blame anyone but his sibling for a tragic, complicated death. The board cleared me completely, but the exoneration felt hollow. I'd been forced to relive the worst night of my life, to justify saving some while losing others, to defend choices that no one should ever have to make. I still work at the Richmond Veterans Hospital. Sergeant Morrison recovered and visits every month. Colonel Patterson retired, but calls occasionally, checking in, and I carry my number, 7423 Delta 9, like a scar, a reminder of the price of service, the weight of impossible choices, and the lives that haunt us forever. What do you think? Did I make the right calls that night? Should combat nurses face scrutiny for decisions made under fire? Leave your thoughts below. And if you stayed with me until this final moment, write the word loyalty, to prove you heard the whole story, and to show that you understand the weight of the promises we make, even when nobody is watching.